mind if you get up and get another cup of coffee or anything, and they won't take offense. It's not, right.
Much worse happens in the classroom.
Right. You really can't offend us.
Oh, nothing to offend you. Okay. Well, I think everybody knows I'm Elaine and I'm the president of the league, and I have a lot of announcements. So I was thinking about a lot of announcements, but that's good. A lot of things are happening. So want to remark about that the women's marches are on January 19th. You probably know there's not one in Chicago. There will be one in New Lenox at the New Lenox Commons from noon to 3 p.m. And I also would mention that there's a League of Women Voters sponsored march in Rockford. And the Rockford League keeps telling me that the road runs both ways. Not just into Chicago, but back. And so it's at Rockford from noon to 2 p.m. at the Rockford City Market. Then I'll be passing out flyers. If you recall, the LaGrange League had a wonderful program planned in November, and the one snowstorm that we had closed the school. So they had to reschedule it for Tuesday, February 12th. So it's a wonderful one at Lyons Township South, High School South. Did I get all the words in there?
Together.
But anyway, I'll pass that around, and then we're saving paper today. Our next meeting will be on February 9th here. It's on climate change, or the changes in climate, a threat to our planet. And we have retired scientist Dr. Jan Hessler speaking retired from Argonne. I'll be passing those around. Start those around. Also, at our board meeting, which is going to be February 19th, we will be looking at the state program planning. And that means about the state public policy. So if you have anything you think the State League ought to start working on, please let us know. Also look at it. It's on there, the Illinois League, LWVIL.org, and then just look for program planning. Also, I want you to mark your calendars for our annual meeting on May 8th. We'll be at the Midlothian Country Club. And think about if there's anything that you can donate for our raffle gift baskets. Tony, who's just sitting down, is our gift basket person.
Raffle lady.
Yes. So if you have anything, please donate it to her. We like to get an early start because it takes her a lot of work, and she doesn't want to be rushing around at the last minute. So let's start thinking about things for that. Also wanted to mention, we do things with the Illinois Philharmonic Orchestra. They're planning a mother-daughter tea on March 10th at the Palos Country Club. And I'll be sending out more information on that. And they said authors are welcome to, even though it's called mother-daughter tea. Okay, I think that's all. That was quite a few things. And so I'm going to, oops. We finally got our buttons done, and so if you're interested in any buttons, help yourself, pass them out to other people. And I now think I've got all the announcements, so I'm going to turn over to Kathy, who's arranged our program for today.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Good morning, and welcome to League of Women Voters January meeting, where our panel is going to discuss civics in the classroom. Thank you all for being here. And just a quick reminder to please exercise your civic duty and vote in the election on April 2nd. Both school districts who are represented here have board members that are going to be up for election. So please make sure that you vote. I'm not sure if the ballots are available yet. They were not on the website recently. So recently the law has changed. Actually, it was January of 2017. The law has changed to implement civics in the classroom, which means that something else is going to have to be taken away. Perhaps it's going to be math, English, science, or an elective for our students. So we have to really think about how this is going to look when it's completed by the school districts. They've been all given the opportunity to do their own little thing, so we don't know what our school districts look like at this point in time. Our panel here is to discuss what is presently being offered both at the elementary school and at the high school levels right here in Palos Heights. We unfortunately were not able to get a college, and I kind of wanted to see the succession of what happened to each one of them. There is a handout in the back, and it was taken from the American School Board Journal in October of 2018. It's for your reading pleasure. It's about social studies. It's got a lot of good information in there. It also has the course, it doesn't have a course description. It has all the offering of all the courses that are offered at this Community High School District 218 at Shepherd, Richards, and Eisenhower. So if you'd like to look at it, Ryan is going to represent our elementary school. We don't have that kind of stuff at this point. Please hold all your questions, although we don't really have to because we can kind of free flow through this. I'd like to introduce our panel. Mr. Ryan Mahoney is a representative of School District 128, Palos Heights. He is a social teacher in 8th grade at Independence Junior High. And we have Ms. Gina Hanna, who is a social studies teacher at Community High School District 218, Shepherd High School. Both of them have been teaching quite a long time. I won't even tell you why.
Thank you.
So they're going to introduce themselves and talk about what they offer their students, how it's offered, how it looks in the school right now. If you've got questions, then I would think we can kind of free flow through it. Thank you both for being here, and it's up to you.
Sounds good. Yeah, like Mrs. Lackwood said, at any point ask a question. You know, we get interrupted all the time, so don't worry about it. Yeah, ask any questions. You know, comments, anything. We're perfectly fine with that. As Ms. Lackwood said, I teach at Independence right down the street. I'm glad you didn't say how many years. So
Yes.
It's been a while now. And we've both seen the evolution of civics. We've all seen the evolution of civics, you know, throughout our lifetimes. I still remember taking the Constitution test in 8th grade. I think probably a lot of you guys do too. It's changed, it's adapted like education has. I think it's been both good, and I think there are some things that need to be addressed. Even with the new law, I think it's a great first step. But you know, there are a few things in there that I think the state is sending some mixed messages on a few things. So I wanted to talk about that. But you know, it's kind of ironic because we just started our civics unit on Friday with our 7th grade students, and so I saw it firsthand. And I've been an adjunct professor at Governor State for about 5 or 6 years, so I do see the progression. I only have a couple classes a semester, but I see the progression, and unfortunately, I see our students are very deficient in civics at the lower grades. And I also see it the college students, and you know, an example would be just yesterday we were talking about the Declaration of Independence, and I asked a class after we went through the basic information. I asked the class what date was the Declaration of Independence adopted, and you know, a few hands went up, I'm sure there were more students that didn't know this, but I said, okay, put your hands down. I'm going to ask you a question. Do you guys know what holiday we have that celebrates the Declaration of Independence? If you do, put your hands up. And be honest. Only about half the class put their hands up. So only about half of our 7th grade students knew that July 4th is the holiday that we have that celebrates the Declaration of Independence. To me, that's very distressing in 7th grade. And then I'm sure they do a fantastic job at the high school. I asked the same question of the college students this last semester, and of course a lot of them didn't, you know, they were embarrassed to put their hands up, but there were about 4 or 5 brave souls that put their hands up and said, I don't know what holiday we have that celebrates the Declaration of Independence. And that's 20, 21, 22-year-old students. So I see it as a problem. You know, former Supreme Court Justice, I tell the students this every year, Sandra Day O'Connor said, it's a crisis. And we have a crisis in the United States that we're just uninformed when it comes to civics, government, the Constitution, our rights. And it is a problem, and I think we are addressing it. I know they're addressing it at the high school. You know, I was having a discussion beforehand. We were talking a little bit, and it's laughable. You know, it's funny when we watch the late night talk shows, and You know, they ask people out on the street to identify this and these questions. So I always kind of go through with the students and just give them a few statistics, and these are kind of sobering. But some very recent research in the last couple of years, a few things to keep in mind as we go through and do our talks. 30%, these are adults, these are not students, these are adults. 30% of Americans could not name a single right that's protected in the First Amendment of the Constitution. 26% of Americans could not name all 3 branches of government. 33% of Americans could not name any branch of government. 10%, I laugh, but I laugh so that it doesn't make me cry. 10% of recent college graduates thought that Judge Judy was on the Supreme Court. 40% of graduates, 40% of college graduates could not name the terms for Congress. 36% of Americans would not be able to pass our citizenship test, which requires only a 60% to pass on it. 19% of people under the age of 45 could pass the test. Less than 20% of Americans under 45 would be able to pass our citizenship test. And I think the thing too is, I believe that many people think that they know civics and their rights and the Constitution, and unfortunately they don't. And a very sobering statistic was 89% of people asked said that they would be able to pass a standardized civics test. 83% of those people failed the standardized civics test. So I think we're looking at a little bit of a crisis. And this isn't just high school students, not just junior high students. Of the top 55 ranked liberal arts colleges in the United States, 80% of college seniors graduating from those schools would not be able to pass a standardized civics or history test. So we're talking about some of the elite students in the United States that are leaving to join the workforce, don't know civics, government, and history. So it's a sad state of affairs, and I think, like we said, we're at least addressing it with some of the new mandates, some of the new laws. But it is a little bit of a kind of a double-edged sword, and I think the state's sending some mixed messages, because at the high school level, I'm sure you guys love it because now that civics is mandated, they have to take civics. But the state has also recently said that the 8th grade social studies test, in order to pass and leave junior high to go to high school, is no longer a mandate. So our junior high students do not have to pass a Constitution test in order to go on to high school. That test just needs to be passed somewhere between 7th grade and their senior year in high school. So unfortunately, I hope we don't see a pattern of, and rightfully so, we spend a large amount of time on language arts, reading, math. That's what our standardized tests are all about. I talked to some of the parents. A lot of our parents don't know that the social studies, history, civics, governments, there are no standardized tests. There are none. It's not on any of, PARC, it's not on math, it's not on anything. There are no standardized tests. So many schools, many districts, they spend a lot of resources and a lot of time on what is on the standardized test, which is language arts, reading, math, and rightfully so. But when you do that, something gets pushed to the side. You can't do everything. And unfortunately, the pattern over the last 10, 15 years has been social studies and science to some degree, and history, civics is just kind of being pushed off to the side. I speak with some teachers at the elementary level outside of my district, and they do social studies once every 2 weeks. And I don't know how you expect to learn anything when you do it once every 2 weeks. You could have fantastic teachers and resources and great students, but when you do it twice a month, you're not going to learn it. So, I think, like I said, we're addressing the problem. I think we finally see that there is a problem. Because in our day and age, I was talking with Mrs. Lackwitz beforehand, you would think in 2019 now that it's so easy to obtain information. Facebook, Twitter, 24-hour, how many 24-hour news channels do we have? But the problem is, today it's not obtaining it, it's sorting through it. you have to get to that message. You know, we've all dealt with it. To find that unbiased news source is very, very difficult. It's very difficult. I think the state is addressing that also. You know, in our standards for social studies, one of our standards is evaluating resources. You know, looking at a source and deciding is that a reliable source. So kids today, you know, they've got all the information at their hand, but it's difficult and it's hard. You know, one of the very first things I tell them is it's hard to be an American. It's hard to be an informed American these days because you just have to sort through so much. You know, I was talking that I have my master's degree in political science, and sometimes I turn off the TV because I can't handle watching the news about politics anymore, and that's what I have my master's degree in. So a 12-year-old student, a 16-year-old student, to say be informed and watch the news, that's not realistic. So, you know, groups like this and forums like this, I think are fantastic because I think getting the message out there and understanding exactly what we do and what we need and what our strengths are, I think it's imperative to have a citizenry that, you know, knows what they're doing. I told the students yesterday, to paraphrase Thomas Jefferson, you know, he said, if you're expecting to be ignorant and free, you're expecting something that's never been and never shall be. It's not going to happen. You have to be informed. So we've adapted. I think we've done our best to provide these services. At Independence, and I know at a lot of other junior highs, we take it half a year to do civics. So between 6th grade and 8th grade, we take about 5 months to go through and just talk about the state constitution and the federal constitution. Because I think, for myself, I think I really have 2 goals. You know, I don't blame the teachers, the 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade teachers, because they're just slammed with math and science. And when we get the kids, when it comes to civics and government, they're deficient. You know, like I just said, they don't know why we celebrate July 4th. So we have to kind of get them up to speed on things that I feel they should know a little bit earlier, and then we need to prepare for high school. So a lot of what we do at the junior high level, I feel, is very basic, base information. You know, this is the Declaration of Independence. This is what it says. This is how it relates to you. You know, these are the parts of the Constitution. You know, things like the terms of Congress. I think we try to give them the base information, and along the way, you know, theories and how things relate to their lives. But I think if they have the base information, then when they get to you guys, then that's really when they can get into, and you know, they're starting to vote. That's when they can, you know, really dig deep into what being an American means, what being civically engaged means. So, and once again, it's kind of a double-edged sword. I really don't think we should be teaching 7th graders and 8th graders, you know, things like July 4th, 1776. That should already been done, but it's absolutely necessary in order them to understand the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution. I had a discussion with an administrator not too long ago who said that they don't need to know that George Washington was the first president of the United States. They don't need to know that. And my response was, that's not the only thing they need to know. If we're just teaching them that George Washington is the first president, we're not doing our jobs. But you need to understand that George Washington, in order to understand what's going on today in our government, you need to understand George Washington was the first president and what he had to deal with, and you know how that relates to every other president in the government since then. So we give them the base knowledge, and then we try to build on as much as possible, and then I toss them to her and say, "No, they're yours. I've done my best. You take them." So just specifically for Independence, in 7th grade. We just started on Friday. We do a half a year of, we refer to it as government. It's basically civics. So we spend the vast majority of our time learning the federal constitution, the branches of government, the amendments, their basic rights, how it applies to them, what they can, what they can't do. We spend a lot of time actually talking about their rights outside of school versus their rights inside of school. And they're shocked. They always think that they're the same, and you know, we point out to them that they're not. You have the freedom of speech in school to a certain extent. So we try, just like everything, and you guys know this, you don't have to be a teacher to understand this. If you don't relate it to their life, they're not gonna be interested in it. So we try to relate it as much as possible. And we'll go January, February, March, April, and half of May, and we concentrate on nothing but the United States Constitution. So we spend a lot of time on it. The Illinois Constitution we pick up then in May, and we kind of flow right into it. We do still have a Constitution test that they have to pass, and the 7th graders come in every year with giant eyes because they've heard about it from their brothers and their sisters, and it's this massive 170 question test, and they have 40 minutes, and it's kind of, I shouldn't say this, but it's kind of fun to see them in August already nervous about a test they have to take in May, but that shows me that they're taking it seriously, that not many of them don't want to just take the test to pass it and get a good grade. Many of them want to learn the information because they know that's going to be beneficial for their lives. And to me, that's fantastic to see that. It's also, I've seen over the last few years, many of our students, and I'm sure the high school students, being much more engaged outside of the classroom, volunteering, forums like this, watching the news. Kids come in all the time and say, hey, I watched this last night, I watched this speech, I saw this on Facebook, I saw this on Twitter. So they're getting the knowledge, it's just kind of them applying it and then hopefully getting the correct message. And I was talking with Ms. Lackwitz beforehand. We avoid at all costs any opinions. Our job is, here is the information, now you make an informed decision. And whatever that informed decision is for you, that's fantastic. But like we said, sorting through that information to get to it is sometimes difficult. So we'll see where we're at in May. We'll see when we take the test how well we've done. Our students at Independence usually do very well. We have about a 95% passing rate on the Constitution test. And many kids, when I see them later, when they come back from Shepherd, will come down to my room and they'll quiz me on the Constitution. I still remember this, and I still remember this, do you remember it? So it's nice to see that. So just to kind of sum up, our job is really to get them up to speed, and where I kind of think they're lacking, we just, I guess rightfully so, we spend so much time on reading and math. We get them up to speed, really relate government to, because it's, 7th and 8th grade, it's kind of hard to talk to a 2nd and 3rd grader about, this is how government impacts your life. But 7th and 8th graders, it's a really scary thought, but I was talking to my 8th graders yesterday and I said, in a couple of years, when you guys have your driver's license, and it made me step back and say, oh my God, these guys are going to have a driver's license in a couple of years. You better know the Constitution, you better know what your rights are, you better know what you can and can't do. So in 7th and 8th grade is really when it starts to sink into them that it is my job to learn these things. And then I think when they go to high school, you get much, much deeper and I think that's kind of the system we have set up now, is really get them up to speed, get them excited about learning civics and being an engaged American, and then send them off to their high school. So are there any questions at all? I know I kind of rambled for a little bit.
You said a half year in 7th grade. How about 6th and 8th grade half year also?
No, we don't.
Just 7th grade?
Yeah, so how we have it set up at Independence, and I know a lot of schools have this model, but they might switch the years a little bit. 6th grade is world history. 8th grade is American history. 7th grade is half the year American history, and then half the year is civics and government. So in 6th grade, they'll do ancient history, China, Europe, Greece. In 7th grade, we get them, and then we go up to the American Revolution, which is a good stopping point, because then the next step is the Constitution. And then we spend the entire, January through May with the Constitution, and then in 8th grade, we jump right back into American history again. And really, to get off subject, but in 8th grade, our big emphasis is economics in 8th grade. So yeah, we do just about that half a year.
I just wanted to ask you, when you said it's important to get them to relate, has the Broadway show Hamilton helped, and has the rap music helped them get interested?
Yeah, I have, here's a pretty good example. I have a student who I have to, on a pretty regular basis, all of our students have iPads, and on a pretty regular basis, I have to tell him to take his headphones out and stop listening to the Hamilton soundtrack. I never thought I'd have to do that, but It is, quite a few of our students have seen it, and if they haven't seen it, they've heard about it. And just the other day, we had a discussion about it, and anybody that hasn't seen it had raised their hand and said they want to go see it. So at the very least, it's created interest in American history and civics. As far as popular culture and music and rap, one of the things that we've done in the past, and we kind of got away for a couple years, we're going to pick it up this year, is one of the small assignments we do is the kids they do a rap battle, but they are assigned a historical figure. So it could be like Franklin Roosevelt and Abraham Lincoln, and they have to have a rap battle against each other. So, anytime they can use their brains and use their creativity and use popular culture, you're 100% correct. It's definitely beneficial.
That's great. Has anybody made those Hamilton tickets available to students, because they're atrociously expensive? And it's such a great show.
Yeah, we have. There's an English teacher at our school, Jeff Fazana, who was able to get a group rate. They went for $10, I think.
You're kidding.
Yeah, and it was like on a Sunday.
You set some aside, I think.
Yeah, it was an afternoon performance,
Yeah.
and it was only for students only.
And it was AP and honors kids, I think, for mostly.
Some of the other government kids.
Yeah. But because in New York, where the play comes from, is this for you?
It's on
They have a whole program where the kids, it's like a couple days of like prep work, and then they go in and they're talking to the people on the stage. There's a lot, involved. And for us, it was just, hey, let's go see it.
The package that they had to do a packet.
But there was work, ahead of time that had to be done. And the kids were fascinated. And now Lin-Manuel Miranda keeps getting like messages from people, why don't you do this guy in history? I don't know, what about that guy? Like all kinds of, because if he keeps doing this, it's pretty incredible. And I'm sure he's got lots of other talents, he doesn't just want to do history. But yeah, I think it's been amazing for our kids. Yeah, for sure.
Getting back to the Constitution, have you ever used the book Fault Lines in the Constitution by Cynthia and Stanford Levinson? It's very simple, it's easy to read, and they talk about cases that have come up and how it tested the Constitution and everything else like that. It's a real simple read.
Yeah, we actually do not use any book for the Constitution. What we do is we try to use as many articles, as many current first-person resources as possible. There is a generic Constitution book that is put out every year that has a little bit about all the branches and things like that. The thing we found is, unfortunately, time is such a constraint that reading any outside material to supplement what we're learning it's almost impossible.
But just as a reference for you, it has like little tidbits, like stuff that would spark their imagination. This is this way because, it has a lot of that, and so it would relate to them easier.
Yeah, they do. What we found is the kids love the court cases. They love the court cases. Even the 8th graders, we do mock trials in 8th grade about the 1920s, so like Sacco and Vanzetti and the Scopes trial. They love it. They love to research about it, find out about it. And in 7th grade, like I said, one of our big concentrations is your rights inside the school. So, we do like, Tinker versus Des Moines and things like that. And they love it. They love to get into it and then figure out how that case could then relate to their lives. So, anytime that they can relate the information to their life is even exponentially better than when we can relate the information to their life.
You mentioned Sandra Day O'Connor early on. Have you any exposure to her program, iCivics, which is free to all the mid-level and the high school programs, and it's games, and it's got teacher lesson plans, it's got everything. Have you thought about that?
No, we've you probably get the same thing. We get every day 2 or 3 or 4 different programs in our box to look through. That one I have not. I've heard it. I haven't seen it.
It's
fantastic.
Fabulous.
Okay.
We can get it and put it on
Do
the
you make
website.
the students aware of who their representatives are in different areas and give them addresses and encourage them to communicate?
Yeah, a few years ago, one of the assignments we did every year was you had to write a letter to your representative. You could just tell them you're doing a good job, you could pick out a topic, you could see something you want to change, but just to correspond and show them that, you know, you can email, you can talk to them. We even do the old-fashioned way of, you know, we make them memorize President, Vice President, you know, President Pro Tem, Speaker of the House, your representatives, your senators, your state senators, and then, you know, make it available to them that's what they're there for. They're there for you to contact them and talk to them. That's what their job is. So, yeah, we definitely make it available to them.
We're going to put you on the spot, and can I get a copy of that Constitution test?
Absolutely.
All right, so maybe they will, one of our meetings, we'll all cakes and giggles, and we'll get you the results.
Only give me the results if they're good.
All right.
Yeah, it's a long. It is long. It's we've modified it over the years, but it's about 165 questions. They have 40 minutes to take it. It's a lot of, like I said, the basic information. You know, we go through a lot of theories and we go through a lot of how it relates to their life, but that's really kind of difficult to test without, you know, an essay, and then you kind of get into being subjective a little bit. So our Constitution test, the vast majority of it is, you know, and some people would say it's kind of archaic, but a lot of it is true, false, multiple choice. Who's your president? How long is he there for? You know, who are the representatives? How long does the senator get to serve? And that's think the great base information for you guys. If that's all we taught them, then we wouldn't be doing our job. But they need to know that, and they need to know how that applies to government and applies to their life. So yeah, I'll definitely get that to you.
Okay.
I'm interested to see how
I'll make some copies.
I have a feeling you guys
You
are doing
take
a
all
little bit
those
better
results
than
to your
Yes,
class.
than the average.
Yeah, I think you guys would do a little bit better.
Or sign us up for that class. Thank you so much, Ryan.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
All right. Okay, so you're, I understand.
Gina sits in her class.
I don't sit very much at all. So I feel like first of all, you're doing a fantastic job at the junior high level because they are coming to us, I think, with the basics, which I'm very grateful for because I don't want to have to teach, you know, that far back in the basics. And you are correct, it's true. We do try to get them to then take those basics in high school as they're approaching voting age and learn how to use those, go in depth. You know, how do I contact my representatives and senators, and what do I do if I disagree? You know, how do I find things out that do affect, you know, my life? And so that is, you know, a big part of where we go. I had originally thought I would start with the difference between what they learn when they come in U.S. history, which is their junior year, and government and econ, which is their senior year. Now, I started way back with teaching government, and I was stressed that it was only a semester because I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to teach everything that, you know, they need to know about how the government works in a semester? It's ridiculous. It's too short. So when this push for civics came, I'm like, dang, that should be the second semester. Even though the second semester is economics, which is important, of course, as well. But I do feel like, especially with the political climate that we have today, it is important for them to focus, to zero in on very specific civic education. The quote that you said about Jefferson is so funny. That was my last slide. I was going to do the PowerPoint. The first slide was Ben Franklin's quote when he was asked what kind of government are we getting, and he said, a republic if you can keep it. And I always say to the kids, you know, it's our responsibility to keep it. You can't just expect this republic to work. It's the whole definition of republic is you. You are involved. You're taking part. You don't take part, it's not a republic. And so there is a upside to the way things are, you know, today with things being so, what seemingly is so divisive. We've had divided politics for forever. And I don't think a lot of people realize, oh, it's so bad today. It's been bad. Jefferson and Adams were brutal to each other. They said horrible things about each other, horrible. And when I show the kids the quotes, they're like, oh my God. I'm like, yeah, we didn't invent nastiness. We really did not. It's just more public. You could see it more because of social media, right? So social media to me, I think, we have to be able to harness this. and use it to our advantage, because I think it can be the thing that is deteriorating their brains and taking them away from us as far as what they really need to know, but it could also be the thing that directs them to the right place. So a couple things that we've been doing. You guys have, all the kids have iPads, you said, which is fantastic, because all of our students have iPads as well. That's new as of last year, I think. We did out in whole school. We all have these school given MacBooks and our iPads still, because they give us iPads first. And then a lot of teachers are freaking out because the screens are really small. If you think about like your desktop at home and the whole keyboard and everything, like using this little mouse pad, this little thing with your fingers, it's really difficult. But the benefit of it is far outweighing, trying to learn these new things. So one of the things that I've been trying to get them to do, and a lot of the kids are freaked out about going from paper to digital. They like paper, they want to write on things, they don't want to have everything, digital. But the good news is we can use some apps and things that they want to play with on their iPad anyway to get them to be more involved. One of the ones we were talking about before we started is museum, and I'm going to write it because it's
some apps, guys, so if you want to go look them up on your...
Yeah. So this is a place if you've ever been to Washington, D.C., and you've not gone to the museum, you need to go. It is mind-blowing, right? And it's like the coolest place ever. So this is actually also an app, and this app will show you the main newspaper headlines from every state in the country, and then from every country, really, in the world. You could go and find, and obviously there are foreign languages you have to translate, but it gives you a link where you can link and flip the pages of the actual newspaper and see it. And then it also gives you, there's a little thing that says subscribe. They, of course, want you to subscribe, to the paper, which I think is awesome. So that kind of app, there's websites. Look, we start, now it's so interesting that you mentioned iCivics, because iCivics, and it's written like this, has all sorts of lessons, and one of the lessons, they have games, they have all kinds of things, but one of the lessons that I use in the beginning of the year is about separating fact from opinion in the news, and what's the word I want for? Like, you're verifying the news, right? And so there's websites that will help you do that. Okay, so you have Snopes, you have PolitiFact. What was the other one? There's one other one. I can't remember it off the top of my head right now. Fact Check. That's a good one. Okay, so I'm actually going through, and what I do is I give the kids news stories, or I just have them search. Just go search a news story. Do you think this is a true story? And then flip it into Snopes. When I was on Facebook, totally off now. I can't deal with it anymore. I can't. I miss my friends. I miss my relatives in Italy. Posted pictures, but I'm like, send them to me in the mail. I can't do Facebook anymore because friends of mine, fellow teachers in other subject areas who were made nameless forever, would post news stories, and I'd be like, copy, paste, Snopes, get the real story, and then I would copy and paste that right under theirs, and I go, please check your facts before you post this as news. They get mad at me, right? And I'm like, this is not news. First of all, anybody who's getting their news from Facebook, really, come on, get it together, people, okay? There's other real places to get news. So I would purposely do that to say, like, come on, you got to think about this. And then people would say, well, there's a picture. Well, there's a video. Yesterday, I showed in my class a video that went crazy viral months back, maybe even a year or so, about a little toddler at a park who was an eagle swooped down and picked the kid up and then dropped it. And everybody went crazy, oh my God, an eagle picked up a kid, blah, blah, blah. And so I showed it because they show it in slow motion. And they're like, oh my God, is that real? Is that real? Oh my God, that eagle. I go, it looks real, doesn't it? They're like, and they're looking at me because now they know I'm emphasizing. I go, it's not real. So they're like, whoa, how do we know then what's real and what isn't? I go, it's hard. It's hard to be an American. It's supposed to be. Okay? Because we're giving you the tools. The tools are out there. Use them. If you just sit there and let people input information into your head, and you go, okay, you're not, we don't need you in our society, like voting, because you're not even reading, you're not even trying. You have to try, and it's hard. So we do try to emphasize, that, separating fact from opinion and finding out what news stories, even if they seem real, even if they come from ABC News, whatever, just a trusted, regular old news source, you gotta check it out. And everybody, people make mistakes. I think journalists, that's the other thing we were talking about. Journalists are really busting their behinds now to be more factual because they're being so sharply criticized for lying and not telling the truth, when in reality, sometimes people just can't handle what the real truth is, and so they get called liars, and that's not necessarily the case. It's just what the facts are. There's a slant in everything. We teach that. We teach bias as well. All of history is written with a bias, all of it. We don't teach how the West was lost. We teach how the West was won, our perspective. We don't ask Native Americans, what history would you like in the book about you? We don't sit down and write their stories that way. We tell their stories.
We also don't ask Mexicans
Right?
how they felt when we took over all their property.
Oh, I know. The map, when I pulled down, says Mexican session.
Took this land.
Right.
Yeah.
And I go, a session is something you give up. C-E-S-S-I-O-N, session. They ceded it right. They were like, hi, America, we're done with this land. Would you like it? No, we picked a war and took it. We took it because we wanted it, because it was our manifest destiny. So that's what we believe. That's not what they believe. So I have a poster in my room. I'm not afraid to teach, like, the real history. I'm not scared. There are states in this union that will not let real history be taught. I could never work there. They would fire me. They would never hire me. There's no way. I'd be like, I'm not teaching this because it's not it's not real. Facing reality, facing what our history really is, isn't un-American. It's what makes us American. This isn't Stalinist Russia. We're not blacking out pages in the book and going, oh, that might not make people love America. No, we love America for our faults and our things that we do correctly. That's what freedom is. We mess up sometimes. We have to understand it and learn from it and grow from it. So I think that's kind of where we're at with the high school. I'm trying to think of the government class over the summer is a little bit different than the regular school year. But I know in the regular school year they do town hall projects, where kids have to go to town hall meetings, be active, take part in it. I've had them write their own bills, argue them into law in class, read court cases, they do love the court cases, analyzing the court cases. There is a lot of kind of government civics education, even in history. We're kind of like, scraping the surface, and then the next year in government, they dive in really deep, because the Constitution is covered in our U.S. history book. But I don't spend, because again, time, 180 days, the school year never gets longer, but history does. I always say we used to start with like Columbus and Pilgrims and all that. I can't talk about that anymore. I gotta get to yesterday, man. I'm never gonna get there, I can't. So we're trying to get as far into the 2000s as we can in US history, so we kind of have to skim over that. And government as well. I feel like the role of government is changing so much that even our books, just given the basics, here are the three branches, here are the roles of the president, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's cool, except for you gotta talk about all these different presidents, because they have changed how active the government is and how active the president is. It's not just the political party, it's that person's kind of personality and how they use things like media. No one has ever used media like our current president. And so what does that do for the future now? How is that going to change the way our presidency looks going forward? It's scary and interesting, a little bit, because it could be for the good. It could be something that, makes kids want to do more. I was floored by our kids' reaction to the Parkland school shooting. And those kids, when they did that march, I cried through the whole thing, because I was like, I didn't think I would ever see this in my life. Teenagers on TV running a march, giving these speeches, and passionate speeches. And I said to my students, this is not just about this issue is major, but this is just about you getting involved. Do you see what they're doing? People say, oh, I can't make a difference. No, maybe just you talking about it in your living room. No, you cannot. You have to get up off the couch and do something. And so I feel like at the high school level, we are stepping into that realm more and more all the time. Where I think back, when I first started, it really wasn't as an active sort of lessons as it is now. So I think you can feel good in knowing that, the basics come to us, and then hopefully we get them to act, and hopefully, beyond that they do even more. and I'm not afraid, and I know we're not supposed to say like our own political opinions, and I don't stand up there and say, hey, this is who I think is great, and this is who I think is terrible. But my opinions are kind of leaked out in the way that I speak, and I say them all the time. That's called point of view. We teach document analysis and AP history, and one of the things that kids have to know is what's my point of view. So I say, hi, I'm a single mom of 2 teenagers and a teacher. So do I care about universal health care? I mean, so you have to look at it from my perspective. You could say, well, of course, this person, feels this way because of, look at, the background that they come from. So it's important for them to know why I feel the way I do, not just, I don't like this person. And that's what I tell them all the time. It's not about who I like or don't like. It's what I feel is good, decision-making by our leaders, good choices by me as a citizen, how I'm raising my kids to be good citizens. That stuff matters. And as they get older, they understand it more. Yeah, the junior high level, I don't know, God, I could never do what you do. I don't know how you get them to sit down and just stop being teenagers and being crazy, being young kids. But for us, I think it's a growth, you know what I mean? It takes time, and some kids are more mature than others. Some kids are more into it and willing and desiring of that information and knowledge than others. So I love it. I really do. And I kind of like that I don't want to say I like that it's crazy, but I like that there's so much challenge out there now that you have to, we spend the first maybe 5-7 minutes, I really try to watch the clock because we can really go off on a tangent, in U.S. history. Like I'll sit at I have a podium, I have a stool behind me. All right, so what's going on? Who's got a question about what's happening today in the news? Oh my God, Miss Hannah, did you see blah, blah, blah? And first thing we do is talk about what's real and what's not. Like, all right, let's take it easy. Is that a fact? And then, what do you guys think about that? And again, taking out their iPads, and if they say, well, is this true, is that true? I don't know, throw it in Snopes, let's go, check it out. And then we, figure out from there what we think about it. So I love that part of the day. I wish we could go on and on about that, because they do have a ton of questions. And they are really interested. A lot of my regular U.S. history class, my honors, the AP kids, they're all, if you throw the right subject out there especially, they can get real fired up real quick. So that's why I want them here. I want them here for this, especially, what was the other title? The impact on our communities of gun violence. That I really want them to come and see what's going on in our communities like that. So.
Well, the next time we do, we talked about the lady who came and talked about the legal marijuana, and she is a graduate of Shepherd High School, and we talked about that after it happened, and I said, I wish we had known that, because then I would have promoted that to the students to come here and see, because they were all up in arms about voting. We had the biggest amount of people that were registered to vote at that point in time, so because they thought it was going to be the end all be all of everything. But to hear different perspectives on both sides of
The argument, sure.
Yeah, who was doing it, who was against it, why they want it, why they don't want it, and things like that. So that's one of the things that we do here, and I love what our kids are doing. I love that the league gets out there and introduces it to the kids as well.
Absolutely.
And it's funny that you bring that up. Sorry to cut you off, but we in 8th grade.
Microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. In 8th grade, probably the thing that kids look most forward to is, well, we do what we call a stock market competition. They pick stocks and they use their iPads, they look up real numbers, and they keep track of how much they made and lost. And I hear them walking in the hallway saying, oh, I lost $1,000 today on, Tesla. And, it's so stressful. It's play money. They're stressing out. They don't want to look at the numbers. But one of the students purchased stock in a medical marijuana company. And probably 5 or 6 years ago, I would have even said, no, you're not going to do that. But I was listening to the discussion he was having with the student next to him, and they said, well, is that legal? Can you do that? And the kid's response was, I don't care if it's legal or not. I'm making a ton of money. So there's a whole different perspective.
They're learning.
I always wanted us to, when Ashley was in school, I always wanted it to be available to the parents to be able to do the stock club, because it was great. It would introduce them to stocks and how to buy and sell. And I want to do that.
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing how much they do. When I talk about credit scores and how you get a good credit score and how you start getting like credit card applications in the mail at 18, and they're all looking at each other. I haven't had econ yet, so I know Sylvia McFadden at Shepherd teaches a lot of practical economic stuff, financing and all that stuff. And they're always so amazed. I'm like, do you guys talk to your parents? Like, come on. Because I've been trying to get my kids to learn about budgeting and, putting money away and what, how to make money from money and all that kind of stuff. And small amounts, just a little bit. But it's amazing how they'll get really, they'll get fired up and stuff. I love it.
I just wanted to ask you, I also was impressed with the Parkland kids. When I read about them, I was blown away by the kind of experience they had. Debate team, they had debated gun bills, and they hit the ground running. And how they acted when they talked to the legislators, they were respectful, but they came right back at them and didn't let them get away with their reasonable little excuses. Do you think that's indicative of kids across the country, or do you think these kids were particularly prepared?
Unfortunately, I think there's still a long way to go with that, because I think there are so many areas of our country that have different ideas, especially on guns, and it's embedded in their communities and in their families. And even when they see that on TV, they'll say things like, well, if the teachers had guns, then that wouldn't have happened. Or they would say something to make it sound like, well, that kid was crazy, so this is a crazy problem, it isn't a gun problem. There's always some sort of comeback. And I feel like the adults who feel that way, that's how they raise their kids. And until their kids are in a situation like those Parkland kids, I don't think they're gonna understand it. And unfortunately, there's been so many examples. Why do we keep waiting for more examples of this to happen?
Well, we're waiting for Congress to have an idea.
Yeah, right. When are they gonna get the epiphany, that, oh wow, this is something that we can actually do something about? But I think the key to that is getting gun lobby out of their, pockets. I think that's the whole, they won't do anything unless it's gonna,
And those kids are
pay
taking
for
the
them.
money for that.
I love it. I
Really?
love it. They really are. And how are they going to look at that? How are you as an adult looking at a kid and going, sorry, kid, I got to get reelected. Sorry, I want to feel unsafe,
And the
in your
kids are
school.
using social media to send out a lot of interesting remarks.
And that's where it's
There are
good,
future voters,
right?
and when they
I'm
don't
so
like what's
glad.
gonna happen, they're gonna end up being voted out.
That's what I keep saying to the kids. I'm like, if you don't make your voice heard now, as you're about to be, when you look at them, you say, hey, I'm voting next year. You want my vote, you better listen to what I'm saying. At least take in what I have to say, into consideration. Because they're like, well, does anybody really care what we think? I'm like, yeah. You know what I mean? If you say that you're going to vote, yes, they will care.
So, have you ever seen Hubert Humphrey's explanation of the preamble?
I don't believe I have.
He talks about the framers, and it's a really good civics lesson.
Okay.
He talks about we the people, not you, not him, not me, not everybody.
Sure.
Everybody, in order to form, it's like bring together. And he goes word by word by word. And it's a great civics lesson. It was in a speech that he gave to some Minnesota business club, but in a documentary on him, I think the possibilities of something. I don't remember.
Is it on YouTube?
I'm sure.
That portion of it is on YouTube. And if you look up Hubert Humphrey preamble,
Yeah.
and another two things is lately on PBS on either Point of View or Frontline or American Experience, one of those, there are a couple documentaries. One is the Facebook thing,
Okay.
and it's a two-part thing, and they talk about how Facebook, once they went public, they put the like button in there, and the like button just changed everything, and how it started the Arab Spring and everything, and how the Arab Spring turned upside down, and how political parties started getting involved, and which brings me to another documentary called Dark Money. Did you ever see that one? And it's about in I want to say Minnesota. They had this guy was tracking how this political guy, one of the state senators or whatever, and they said, we don't know where this money's come from. They talked about the Koch brothers, and there are all these different PACs that are, when One Citizen United came in and all that, and there's a lot of good documentaries out there. Frontline is very good source for kids nowadays, and it's like, they don't want to watch that stuff, I understand, but.
Well, and that's the thing I always say, like, when we were in school, movies, even about historical events, were like, oh god, they were so dull. And now it's like, movies about historical. Look at Dunkirk. They got Harry Styles in Dunkirk. You really think my high school girls would watch a movie about the miracle at Dunkirk unless Harry Styles was in it? As soon as I say Dunkirk, they're like, oh yeah. And I'm like, I don't care why you watch it. Yeah, that's cool. Harry Styles, awesome. Because it draws their attention, and more celebrities. People they know and recognize and trust because they listen to their music. The more they get out there, either on the left or the right, it doesn't really matter as long as it gets their attention, and they tend to be on the left, obviously. But it does kind of bring an awareness. And I have a conservative brother. Makes me itch a little, but I love him. But he will say things like, I don't know why these celebrities think we have to listen, they gotta shove all this down our throat, why do they have to use it? And I'm always like, they're just saying, they're using their platform. You're using yours right now, you're sitting on the couch next to me. Why do I have to listen to you because we're on the same couch? Why don't you shut up? You know what I mean? So a celebrity using their platform, using their position, yay, that's good. You don't have to listen, turn the channel, don't listen. They could be speaking from the left or the right, it doesn't matter. Let them use their power for good, whatever that good is in their mind. So I think there's a lot to be said about what's offered today between YouTube and just news outlets that they see online and apps and different programs. There's a lot, so it can be really used for good, and that's what I'm hoping that we were both just talking about being in our single digits before we retire. Like, we're hoping that as we fade away into the sunset of education, that the new crop, that's mostly what they're going to be doing, is probably using technology to get the kids interested. I mean, even voting, right? The computer screen. I see so many people standing in front of the screen like, and they're looking around. I'm like, get the paper. What are you doing? They're like, they don't know what's going on. And I said, well, if they can't, if that's difficult for them, let's transition. But eventually, there probably won't be paper anymore.
Yeah, well, that brings another note. Doris Kern Godwin.
Yes, love her.
So she did LBJ's
Yes.
biography and all that stuff, and she goes, I went through all these papers and letters that he wrote, and it's like, and it's like I'm reading the President series that Arthur Schlesinger wrote and edited. And it's like all these were from documentation that was sent back and forth, or letters to their wives or anything else. And it's like, what are we going to have? Here's a USB, flash drive or whatever.
Well, I think you are able to. Things can be scanned in and seen. My brother used to work security. My other brother used to work security at the National Archives building. And when he was bored, he would literally kind of just go through stuff. I'm like, Rick, I don't think you're supposed to be touching that stuff. It's like, oh, it's all in plastic. It's all good. He found something that Lincoln signed. He was freaking out. I'm like, don't. He calls me. I'm like, don't touch it. He's like, it's in plastic. It's all protected. But there are those things that exist, and they're scanned in so the kids can see them, and we use them. And I think it does matter when they see the actual handwriting, the actual paper. It gives it more value. Like, dang, this is old. They look at it like, this is, falling apart. So there's something to be said for that.
Well, with the manipulation of video, like the eagle picking up the little baby,
can
or
fake it.
manipulation of audio and all that
Well,
stuff.
that's why you gotta go to
it's
like
true.
museum or the National Archives, online. National Archives online is amazing. There's a lot of places that are very trustworthy, government sources of information that they have to be able to count on.
Do you ever have any discussions about the security of the touch screen voting?
In class, we've not had that, but I have thought that myself, because I, in the past, have gone to the screen and I'm like, I kind of like this screen. I don't know if I trust what this is doing. So the last time the line for the screen was really long, I'm like, give me paper. So I did the paper one. I'm over there connecting my little arrows and feeling good. Put in the thing. And again, there's the whole, look what happened in Florida again.
Well, there is
how many
some
different
concern
states.
that those can't be.
Yeah, they're finding ballots. Like, how hard is this? Like, is this really that hard? Come on.
To the blue
Boxes
finger.
of ballots.
Yeah.
One of our 8th graders brought that up last year, asked about voting, and we talked about there's the touch screen, there's paper, and I explained to him that it's like an ATM. It's got you just kind of touch it, and they said, so it's computerized, and I said, like, I think it's computerized. I'm not an expert. And he says, well, can it be hacked?
Yeah.
And I kind of stepped back and I said, I guess it probably could be. I don't, you'd have to find out about it. So at least that is something they're thinking about.
Well, the other thing too is when you're using your finger, you put your fingerprint out there.
Yeah.
So now your fingerprint can be traced to how you voted.
Ooh,
Well, but it's not, they're not
paper
recording.
ballot.
Well, you don't know that.
Oh, I see.
We
what
don't
you're
know that. We haven't had enough experience with this to see if your finger, when you touch
Yeah.
it.
I'll tell people.
Say, I've been so encouraged by hearing the two of you. I feel like there's hope for that.
Oh, good. No, I think you should have hope. I'm glad to hear that.
But I want to ask a question,
Sure.
of course. Is there room, or I would use the word that you use, time, in a high school, not your level, but in a high school curriculum for what I would call comparative contemporary government, which means, look what Poland is doing right now. Look at Egypt. Look at any country in Africa, pretty much. And then you will understand what we have.
Mhm.
I think that is a really good way of grasping why it's, everybody doesn't do what we do.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it so special.
Mhm. That is a stellar point to make. We do offer an elective course called AP Comparative Government. However, it hasn't really flown yet because like 10 kids don't know what it is, sign up for it, and then they don't run it with 10 kids, which I feel like they probably need to just to get it off the ground, so 10 kids could go talk about it to 10 kids each, and then next year we have 20. Definitely, and in the course description, it picks 10 different nations around the world that show like 10 different forms and different ways of going about it. As the basis of the curriculum. So it is a phenomenal course. I would love to teach it. I think that is something that could be really useful. But to answer your question, no, we don't have time because it is only a semester. And I mean, we're barely getting through the 3 branches, Supreme Court cases, your activism, politics in the media. There's, lobbyists. There's all sorts of, units already jam-packed into half of a school year. We need more time. And if we made it a year-long course, then, okay, what happens to econ? And then, okay, are they taking that as freshmen? Oh, that's the other thing I was gonna say. I'm so glad I just thought of it now, is when geography was on state tests for a very short time, our district made geography a requirement, a graduation requirement. As freshmen, they all have to take geography, pass geography, which is great. That was like maybe, a year or two, then they took it off. And we just kept it. We're like, let's not tell anybody. Let's just keep it on there because our social studies curriculum director, Sean McSweeney, does not like to go backwards in requirements for social studies. He's like, let's just keep it. However, I do think an argument can be made that even if we switched out the geography requirement for some sort of civics or comparative government, that would do them an immense amount of good. Even though geography is important, they are going to get it, somewhat in history and other things. I feel like, they need to know more than just, can you pick out a country on a map? Which is, I just watched that on Jimmy Kimmel. We were talking about TV shows, how they, and it's funny because who's walking down the street with a microphone like, hey, can you tell me how many degrees a right angle is? No, they're not doing that. They only do it with social studies and history, and it's because, right, we forget it. If we don't use it, all the time you ladies are using it, we're using it. If it's not something you use, I haven't measured an angle since sophomore year. I don't know how to measure angles. I don't think it's important, right? Because I'm not a carpenter, I'm not, building things, so I don't use that kind of math anymore, so I can't do it. And that's what happens when kids lose their sort of like awareness that they are the democracy, they are what makes it work, they have to do it. And if you're not a carpenter and you don't measure and do all that stuff, then we get it, so you're gonna forget that, nobody laughs at that, nobody tee-ha-has, that you can't prove something in geometry, but it's funny when you can't pick out a state in the United States. I don't think it's that funny.
Well, Brian and I were talking at the beginning too about algebra and how 1, 2, and 3 step equations. Okay, you spend a whole year teaching them that, and then they're gone, and it's gone.
Yep.
And it never comes back unless they're into math and they're going to become a mathematician or
I think,
a math teacher.
I think a lot of why people kind of let go of this too is it gets confused with opinion, going back to the original point I was making. And, you know, I say all the time, and this is something that, when I teach AP Euro, the Enlightenment philosophers would say to the people, like, are any of you challenging math? Are you challenging, like, 2 + 2 is 4? You're not challenging that. You're like, okay, that's a fact. But we say something is a fact, you know, in the political world, wow, you know, we start, like, this climate change stuff and science, too. You know, you challenge science like you know it. Are you studying this? Like, where do you think what knowledge do you have to be able to challenge that? Challenging the Constitution, saying what a president can and can't do. You better know what you're talking about. You can't just stand up and say, well, I have the right to do this and that. Do you? Do you really? Do you know if you have the right, or are you just saying that? And that's kind of what, you know, where I think those kind of things need to be really, you know, hit heavily before they leave high school. Because once they get to college, if they're not, you know, required to take any kind of political science, or they're not going to take it, they're not just going to, you know, fill it in. They're going to take something easy, I guess. I don't know.
I'd just like to make a comment about the little kids in grades K through 5. I work with teachers in K through 12, and I think they are addressing civics, and you're saying, you know, there's not enough time, but most of them will introduce it with children's literature.
Oh, good.
There's a lot of great books that talk about voting, or setting up a classroom economy, or setting up a classroom society. This is your job, how you're going to get paid. You can vote for the leaders, that sort of thing. So they're doing it in an interactive way, at least the ones that are doing a good job. So I think it is being addressed before it gets to middle school,
Yeah.
children's literature.
Yeah, that's the big push, is connecting language arts and social studies. That's where a lot of it is. You know, we have discussions with our language arts teachers about supplementing what they do, and them supplementing us. I think you're 100% correct.
As a resident of both of your districts, I think you're amazing. Absolutely. We're so lucky, and so are the residents, the taxpayers. We're very fortunate.
Well, we're
Thank you.
fortunate to be asked to be here and to be heard. I think it's important that you know what's going on in the schools that you pay taxes for, and be supportive of each other, you know, that's good.
We want to sign up for your classes.
Yeah, mine's there, you know it.
Does anybody else have any other questions at this moment? Hang on for 1 second. I'd like to make one more introduction. So Brian referred to a class that he does with the Stock Market Club, and I'd like to introduce Sharon, because Cheryl is the creator of the club and the runner of the club.
Well, I didn't create it, but
she
I work in
maintains
Econ,
it.
Illinois.
Okay.
Is that, do you do the stock market?
We don't. I just kind of devised the curriculum maybe 10, 15 years ago, but I've heard of it before. Yep.
Yeah,
So
Econ,
putting you
Illinois.
guys together to talk about what we, you know, how awesome it is. So thank you for both. Thank you both for
No,
coming.
thank you.
Hopefully, yeah, but we're into,
Thank you.
recycling. They don't want to buy big ones.
Yes.
It's exactly what my wife needs.
More shopping.
No shopping back.
And if anybody would like to, feel free to take 1 or 2.
Or 12 or 5, yeah.
Yeah.